These are the notes for section 6.2. The title of the section, as you can see, is called Inverses and Contrapositives. In the fall, we studied if-then statements and their converses. So the first statement I have here, if P then Q, remember that the P is called the hypothesis and the Q is called the conclusion. So the if part's the hypothesis and the then part is the conclusion. So in a converse, remember we switch the hypothesis and the conclusion. The two new statements here are the inverse, which says if not P, then not Q. So notice that's simply a negation of the original statement. If not P, then not Q. And then there's the new one also, the contrapositive, which says if not Q, then not P. So if not Q, then not P is the negation of the converse. Okay, we can think about these statements in terms of what are called Venn diagrams. So if we have a Venn diagram and this original big circle is Q, and then inside that circle is a P, then the little circle in the middle represents all the points that are in P, and the bigger circle Q represents all the points that are in Q. So this Venn diagram would correspond to this first statement right here. If there's a point in P, then it is also in Q. Any point that's in the P circle must also be inside the Q circle. And that also is equivalent to the contrapositive, that if a point is not in Q, then it cannot be in P either. Okay? So because these two both are represented by the same Venn diagram, we call them logically equivalent. So these are logically equivalent. Okay? The same can be said about the other two, the converse and the inverse. If I draw another Venn diagram, but this time I put P as the bigger circle and Q as the smaller circle, and then I'll shade in that Q circle. So this one says, the converse says that if a point is in Q, then it's also in P. So if there's a point in Q, it must also be in P. And then the inverse says exactly the same thing. If a point is not in P, then it cannot be in Q. So these two are also logically equivalent. Okay, let's take an example here. Here's a fact. All runners are athletes. That is, in if-then form, we would say if a person is a runner, then that person is an athlete. So the question would be, what can you conclude about each of these following statements? So first of all, Leroy is a runner. So if Leroy is a runner, then the conclusion would be that Leroy is an athlete. Okay. The second statement is, Lucia is not an athlete. If Lucia is not an athlete, then that would imply that Lucia is not a runner. Okay? The third statement is, Linda is an athlete. Well, Linda is an athlete does not necessarily mean that Linda is a runner, so therefore we cannot draw any conclusion or no conclusion. And then the last one is, number 4, Larry is not a runner. So if Larry's not a runner, it doesn't necessarily mean that he's not an athlete, so once again, we cannot draw any conclusion. Okay, that ends the notes here. Your homework would be for you to write these notes down in your notebook, and then make sure you read pages 208 and 209, that's this section, and the homework is page 210, 1 through 21 odd. Have a great weekend, everybody.